let's head on over to Second String, where we talk all other tech. We are going to kick it off with Google Docs. For those of you who use the Google Docs suite of apps, they have an update coming that is apparently going to make it easier to use Google Docs. The biggest thing from this article on Tech Radar is that you'll be able to, as a user, locate tools and features easily, meaning that they've shortened the menu for easier navigation. They basically reorged the items that are in those menus, so it may have a bit of a learning curve because it's different than what you're used to. And additionally, the icons will have a more prominent, real estate space that allows the user for them to be able to quicker use this. I'm thinking probably more so since a lot of schools use Chromebook and they use the Google Office suite of software for school. I think this is probably going to be geared more towards that as folks continue to use Chromebooks in schools. So it seems to be, based on this article, that it's supposed to be a huge shift and better for the user experience. I use Google Docs, if I'm on there, but it's not my go-to. So I can't say for sure that this would have a large impact on me. But for those of you who do use Google Docs and the Google suite of apps frequently or is your go-to, it seems like they have heard some of your complaints and that they have moved forward with making it easier for you as a user to use them.
It may not even be complaints. It may just be Google is trying to put forth a product that is on par with Office. People have been using Office forever and a day, so they know where things are. Google Docs, Google Workspace, Sheets, and all the other products are new, and they are pretty much blank slates, for lack of a better term. So people really don't get into the weeds of the functionality in Google products as they would in Word or as they would specifically in Excel, right? And maybe even PowerPoint, right? Those are the three big properties for Office, right? People really get funky with those, right? Customizing them, right? For
Right.
Google products, it's just like a thing that people use. They really don't, get down into actually customizing and, at the same rate that they would with an Office product. So I think to me, this sounds like Google is like, hey, let us make it easier for you to find all these cool things that you can actually do, as opposed to just like, we need to put this somewhere, let's just put it here, but really don't utilize it, right? So I think they're trying
Mm-hmm.
to, get people to actually utilize it more so they can say this is actually comparable to Office. When now people are just, they know they use it, but they really don't compare it. And I think Google wants to really compare itself to Office. So they're trying to do this to make it easier for people to get more familiar with it and use it to more, get more utility out of it.
That's an interesting take, and you're probably spot on. They want to be a go to for your suite of productivity tools, especially since a lot of people use Gmail and they're already, or, Google Drive, they are already in there. So let's make use of it while you're already in there rather than having to exit, do something in Word or whatever your other
Right.
word processor or Excel sheet
Because
deal is and move it into there. You can do everything within our quote unquote ecosystem.
right, Gmail is a good example. People get funky with Gmail. They get in there and they do folders and they get real specific as to how their Gmail is set up. So Google wants people to do the same thing in Google Docs and Google Sheets and whatever other properties they have. The same form and fashion that people do in Word and Docs, but they really don't care about Outlook all that. Well, no, I'll take it back. People get real specific in Outlook, but more so in general in Gmail. And just because people have been using Gmail forever, so they want
Yeah,
to continue that with their other properties.
for sure. Next up, similar to what we talked about last week regarding who was it, Facebook and the metaverse, where they decided that they were going to up their cut in revenue from being in the metaverse. Twitch, according to this report that I'm reading from PC Mag, has decided that it is, well, they're thinking, it says in the headline, Twitter considers cutting streamer revenue share from 70% to 50%. So whereas before you were getting 70% of the revenue from your content on Twitch, they want to now drop it down to about 50. Y'all are making too much money over there on Twitch, and they are not here for it. It seems they want to make sure that they are getting their fair share of all this money that they are seeing people make on their platform. So this could be some very, very bad news for Twitch streamers. Amazon, they don't have enough money. They don't have enough resources, so now they're gonna come for that extra 20% that you're making on your platform. And again, this is not confirmed, but according to Bloomberg, they cite a source, of course, familiar with the plans. And there are a couple of things that are under consideration. The most, which is, like I said, what you receive as far as revenue for your channel subscriptions via the partnership program, taking that down from 70 to 50%. But they're also trying to decide where they want to give you subscription tiers, similar maybe to the way Patreon does it. You can set different tiers. But for streamers, specific criteria is going to be required to qualify for each of those. So in addition to a possible reduction in your revenue, they are going to put, a little bit more shackle or, bureaucracy, busy work in the way that you handle these subscription tiers that they are thinking about introducing. So I have to say, I'm not a Twitch streamer. I have a Twitch. I go in there sometimes, but it seems to me that a lot of these companies that people are making content for and are receiving money for, it's to the point where it seems to me where it's like one of those things where you're getting too big, you're making too much money. If you're making all this money, my cut should be larger now because you're doing so well, because your content creation, what you're doing is popping off and has all this attention because not of the platform, but because of the content that you create. It seems as if they are saying, if you're doing this well, then that means we should get some more too.
Yes, companies are always going to be profit first, and any way they can find to squeeze profit or squeeze cut costs to increase profit, they're going to do so, right? So this is just one way of Amazon slash Twitch recognizing that people are making a lot of money. Let's see if we can get into that as well. Conversely, though, Twitch does say that if this comes true, they're considering the removal of exclusivity restrictions, which can currently stop streamers from using rival platforms such as YouTube. So even though you're getting less revenue from Twitch, this does, if this is true and it goes through, this can open you up to be able to use other platforms to make up that revenue, right? But
With the added work
ultimately,
of actually moving it over or,
right,
going in two places simultaneously.
right. Um, Ultimately, I believe that content creators, I don't believe you should ever make a platform, make one platform your primary revenue stream. And what's the people that are going to complain about this, if this is true and it goes through, will be those first people getting started to like that level to where you're just getting to where you are becoming a brand yourself and you are relying on this revenue solely from Twitch as your main source of revenue. Now, once you get into I'm a brand in and of myself and I can do things that can generate income outside of Twitch, like working with brands, like hosting events, like offering exclusive content that's only for people if you do this, sign up for a newsletter, do other things outside of Twitch, right? The people who have made it to that level to where they're getting all these money from brand deals and sponsorships and events and exclusive content and Twitch revenue, they ain't tripping off of this little thing that much. But I think this should be a wake up call for any content creator, whether you are just using Instagram, whether you're just using TikTok, whether you are just using YouTube, or you're just using Twitch. Wake up and figure out how you can build your brand without hooking into and solely depending on just one company, because they're going to do stuff like this and you're either going to complain about it and comply, or you're going to say, hey, let me think about my overall brand and how I can get multiple streams of income, so when something like this happens, it won't be night and day how I get affected.
Right. Yeah, I agree. It's definitely a wake up call. We've seen it from multiple
YouTube has
platforms
done it
now.
multiple times.
Yeah.
Instagram has done it. Facebook
Yeah.
does it all the time. And
Yep.
every time they do it, these brands, these businesses are like, oh man, but if your sole source of making money was through Facebook, a free service, you're at the mercy of whatever they're doing versus you
Right.
doing other things and saying, okay, well, how can I make that up? How does this really affect me versus like, oh, the world is going to end, because it's their platform. It's not yours. You got to figure out how to make yours, right?
And it's the onus is on you as a content creator to make sure that regardless of what happens with any platform, is that you aren't going to be so adversely affected that is going to ruin your business model. So take heed. Like I said, we've seen multiple companies do it, especially recently. So it, to me, that signals that the tide is changing, because there is a lot of money being made on these platforms. And trust me, these platforms see it and they are coming for their share, whether you
Just
like it or not.
And just imagine if more content creators had more control over their content, to where platforms did this and content creators in mass said, well, all right, if that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. We going over here. Amazon and Twitch would be like, hey, wait a minute. Wait. Because
We just say we were considering it now. We didn't say we was going to do it.
because Twitch, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snap, none of these platforms create content. All the content is created by the users. So
They
you
just
just need
host
to
it.
figure out how to use that leverage. And a lot of these people, they're just like, oh, people are making money on Twitch. Let me go ahead and just comply just so I can make money. And that's
Right.
okay just starting up. But if you 3-4 years in the game, you
Got
know,
millions of followers,
you need to be figuring
subscribers.
out how to leverage
Yeah.
that outside of these platforms, because if not, and they do something like this, you're screwed.
Yeah. For sure. For sure. So step your game up, content creators. Have a strategy, because this thing can change at the drop of a dime. You're at the whim of some huge conglomerate that's all about the bottom line. Last up in second string, the President of the United States wants to give state and local police access to drone tracking tech. Now, what could possibly I mean, possibly go wrong with this scenario? So it seems that the Biden administration has called on Congress to help them to get law enforcement more involved in drone tracking systems. If you will remember, back during the State of the Union at the beginning of the year, the president did say that we have to put more money into a law enforcement. And I think this is one of those things that kind of tie into that, just on the more tech side of things. So we all know what drones are. You have them for your personal use. Companies use them to drop packages off. Drones are out there. They aren't going anywhere. If anything, they are going to be an increasingly bigger part of our society. So it sounds like it's going to make its way into public safety and into law enforcement. So the White House has a plan called Domestic Counter Unmanned Aircraft Systems National Action Plan. Whew, that's a mouthful. And it basically calls for Congress to reauthorize the authority to track drones given to organizations like Homeland Security, Justice Department, Defense Department, and the State Department. So it's one of those things where more power seems to be heading to not only the federal level, but also now is coming down to the state and local authority, public safety figures as well. So it looks like what is this federal type of engagement with drones is now being proactively moved forward by the president for many of the state and local agencies as well. So basically, the plan at this point calls for a trial program for, of course, a select number of state, local, and it also makes sure to point out tribal communities as well, because we do have a large indigenous population. And it's coming under the heading of infrastructure to ensure that these drones are being used at these, I won't say smaller, but non-federal agencies as well, because the federal government, they pretty much make the rules, and they pretty much kind of can run things as they see fit. So I guess my question is, how bad of an idea do you think this is, or do you think this is a bad idea?
um, so the way it sounds initially is it sounds like government organizations have been getting drones however they want to get them. They reach out to the manufacturers themselves. They get, one government organization will get them from DGI, another organization will get them from whatever other
Drone
competitors
companies.
are to DJI. I don't know of any, but I'm pretty sure it's the Wild Wild West. Number one, at the top, it's the Wild Wild West as to how government agencies are getting and using drones. So it sounds like the government wants to consolidate that and say, hey, we're going to put together a plan to where no matter what government organization you are, this is the process for you to purchase, use, and operate drones, right? That's the first one. The second part of it is like, all right, we need to make it easier for people, me and you, regular people who are getting and operating drones, to identify who those people are. It's almost like a preemptive strike for people who want to use drones for nefarious reasons. If you want to do it, that's fine, but we're going to be able to know exactly who you are, when you bought it, how you bought it, and even your location while you're actually using the drone. Because it's one thing for the government to know the location based on GPS or whatever of the actual drone. Is another thing to know me sitting here using it. They want to know where I'm at too, right? Because for whatever reason, I'm pretty sure they're thinking worst case scenario, flying a drone into a building, into some infrastructure, whatever the case may be, that's fine. They want to figure out how to make it easier for us to track, do some history and reverse find out what's going on, right? Which is fair. It's fair. My problem is this is what y'all decide to take y'all time and focus on. We got all these other things going on. We got COVID. We got, inflation, housing, the word on the street, housing market is about to crash. Infrastructure, Biden with his Build Back Better infrastructure plan ain't working. We talked about these things in the live show. Civil rights, voter suppression. We've got government, whatever CRT is, wherever you want to, whatever you side of it, that's an issue. It's like all these things, and I know the government can walk and chew gum at the same time, but it
Right.
just sounds like they're this seems like it's low on the totem pole right now of things that need to be pushed through versus some of the other more important things going. We got Russia and Ukraine, which some of this kind of not was necessarily
It's
sparked,
related.
but it's related, right? Because China, which is the maker of the uber popular DJI drones that everybody uses, Ukrainian government said, "Hey, China, do us a solid and stop giving these drones to Russia because Russia's using them in their war against us." Right? I don't know exactly how they're using them. So, I'm thinking maybe the government, our government, United States government, is taking off of that, and it's like, hey, we don't want them kind of problems. So let's go ahead and do
Right.
these things right now so we ain't got to worry about that later. Fair. Again, that's fair. We got all these other things that y'all could be like putting forth more effort, but it seems like all we're getting is pillow talk, right?
Yeah.
We talked about it in the live show. Student loan debt. Biden is like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. But with this thing, with
Let's talk about
this,
it.
but with student loans, it's like, yeah, sure, that sounds. Let me get back. Let my people call your people and let's have lunch, right?
Right.
Versus
Because
this
it
thing, they're like,
sounds like they know how to, when they
do
want to get
stuff.
something pushed through, they
Right,
know the proper procedure. Because
right,
additionally, from this article that we're reading from The Verge, they have all these new rules and they take effect in September.
right,
So it's one of those things where if you want to get something done,
right,
you actually can.
right. And
It's just
we've
how
all
much you
gave
want to get it done.
right, and we've all gave the government grief for not keeping up with technology, and technology has always been a step ahead of the government. So government's like, aha, we're trying to catch
We
up.
got one. Yeah.
But it's like drones. That's the technology we got deep fakes, stuff like that. Technology is taking off. We got biometrics. Companies are using
Facial
biometrics, and
rec. Yep.
I got all these things, and it's like, all right, focus on those things that are more important, that are actually in use now
How about
versus.
you beef up the cybersecurity so we don't get hacked?
Right, right. Cyber warfare happening to
Yeah.
where big, whole regions of powers getting affected by hackers. Focus on that
Taking the
stuff.
gas pipeline down. Swoop.
Exactly. But you worried about me in my backyard flying a drone over somebody's private property. That's what we
Yeah.
focused on right now.
And when they put it under the guise of law enforcement and public safety, and as soon as you mention law enforcement or homeland security or police, it's like, we have to do this. We have to give them, this thing. Whether
Right.
it's really high on the priorities of things, when you shroud it in that type of language, then people, of course, yes, let's get on board. We got to do this because we got to give the police and law enforcement and all of these federal agencies, FBI, CIA, NSA, we have to give them all these tools to protect us and keep us safe. When at the end of the day, you're just making rules and regulations so that I don't fly my drone into my neighbor's yard.
Right, right. Which again,
So
like you
yeah,
said, ain't nobody really doing
important,
that.
but in the scale of things, it's pretty low on the list.
Yeah, it's important. Again, like I said, we want government to stay ahead of technology. We don't want drone usage to go from just this personal pleasure to where people are actually weaponizing these things. Because we've seen movies to where people are using drones as weapons, right? So we don't want that. But at the same time, that's way down the line. We got these other things in front of us right now.
Exactly.